essay. So this week I'll make it easier. All I want is 2 body paragraphs based on what you hear inside the circle. So expect that tomorrow. It doesn't have to be typed formal. It just needs to be in your warm-ups. Clearly, we're Socratic seminar. We're doing Socratic seminar 14, and we're going to get this going. Okay, so we're with claim and counterclaim. That's our goal here, is to have a real persuasive writing going on. Argumentative writing. So claim and counterclaims. Whenever you guys are ready, you can begin. I'll slate the question again. Was the United States justified in Japanese internment during World War II because of the threat from the Japanese army? Whenever you're ready, you can begin.
Okay, so I believe that the Japanese internment was justified because it was a wartime necessary, because we were feared that there were going to be spies and or other terrorist attacks that might have caused any more fear in our state.
Is that it? Okay, well, the Japanese internment camps were basically born out of the hysteria and paranoia that came after the Pearl Harbor bombing. It kind of shows how the power of fear can really drive people to do terrible things. The Japanese Americans, they were citizens, and the internment camps violated their constitutional rights. The 14th Amendment of the Constitution reads, "All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the states wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws."
I mean, I don't think.
Constitution, right?
There you go.
Come on, Jonathan, we
No,
want to hear it.
And then to counter the
Too bad.
I mean,
This is serious, Jonathan.
okay. Well, if I can pull up my evidence right here. Yeah, you know what? I'm just gonna go straight from the top. So I mean, okay. So when you think about it, you know, all we did was just put them in the camps. We did not do anything like, say, the Germans, where we went and we're killing them off or giving them. We gave them the necessities of life, and you know, essentially protected them and, you know, the other American people. And you know, and in my opinion, I feel it's, you know, highly justified, because, you know, you have like potential spies within the mix after such a terrible terrorist attack, I guess, you know, by the Japanese, and you wouldn't want something like that happening again, because, say for example, if say a Japanese man goes and kills another guy for, like, I don't know, the emperor of, like, Japan, stuff like that, you know, that like, not only does that like make a family sad, it makes a community sad. Not only does it do that, it makes an entire nation saddened by such a loss.
So what you're saying?
And like,
Such a romantic.
You're doing a good job, by the way.
so yeah, no, but you know, truly, you know, it instills more fear into the nation, and then in effect, it'd probably make harsher, you know, problems on the Japanese Americans. So imagine if the Japanese Americans are running around free, an event like that potentially happens. It will make the American people dislike the Japanese Americans even more after such attack. And putting them in camps makes them secure from such racial abuse from other people, where they're safe and, you know, with their, you know, own people without getting, you know, abuse from other people. Racist.
So what is their crime? Looking like the enemy? That's racial profiling on a mass scale. And the camps, they weren't protecting anyone. The camps were terrible. There was malnutrition, disease. It was
Poor housing.
terrible.
Actually, well, the families, they actually dined together at communal mess halls, and children were still attending school, and they had an opportunity to work, so it wasn't that bad. Not on the level as like the Nazis.
All in all, to say this whole thing in one word, it was hypocritical.
Okay,
What
but
let's say it was hypocritical of the United States in general. Let's say it wasn't the Japanese that bombed Pearl Harbor. Let's say it was a fellow American. Would we be putting everyone in camps? It
At
was
least put the guy in jail.
Yeah, it was the fact that they were foreigners. We didn't know too much about them. That doesn't justify anything at all.
Well,
Gotta
like,
educate
let me
yourself.
get this straight. I know it was like times of war, and you said that like, because like, why would you blame other people for something that another person did? And I know it wasn't like the Nazi camps, like they weren't mistreated or punished or anything, but it was still like it wasn't the best treatment. And not only did you take away like them away from like their normal lives, like you took away opportunities from them, because like a lot of the time was put into staying in the camps, and it's not fair.
And whether in the camp or not, they were still being treated with severe racism. They were still being attacked just for being Japanese. So the camps really did nothing but, I don't know, kind of satisfy a little paranoia I'd probably have.
Did you receive this evidence?
Where did I receive this evidence? Implied.
Blind. So that's the whole misdemeanor of this whole thing. How can you go back in time and just imply that there was racism?
Have you read Farewell to
Yeah,
Manslaughter?
I read Farewell.
How can you imply that the community was sad?
Sad.
Were
Well,
you
imagine.
there?
Let's go
You
and
imagine.
think about
You're
it right
implying.
now.
You're implying.
Yeah.
You're implying. You imagine.
Well, just think about it right now. Okay, just think. I just like to think modern day. So modern day, you know, right? I mean, sure, we still like have racists and like that, but there's always going to be kind people, and I imagine there was still, you know, some kind people at these camps. They were not all a bunch of racists. Are we a
No,
bunch
no,
of
no, the
racists?
racists,
still?
the racists
Are
were
we
the
racist
Americans.
for putting them in the camps?
Are racist for putting them in the camps? I would say no, because we're like legitimately justifying this. Because think about the Japanese. They're here, you know, the Japanese actually attack us. We do not even provoke them. They randomly attack us. You know, in Pearl Harbor, they get some, you know, like, you know, theocracy of the
first
sea.
of all, it's World War II. It's an act of war. They're declaring war on us. It's
Yeah.
not a terrorist attack.
Yeah, yeah.
So what? Us putting the Japanese on the like camps, that's an act of cowardice on us.
Well, it was a wartime necessity because we were still afraid of any more future terrorist attacks.
But does
Yeah,
that
how
make
does-
it right?
Yeah, how does that make us better than Nazi Germany?
Well, I mean,
Because
they
we're
I
doing
mean,
exactly the same thing.
We're
Yes,
doing not the exactly
we're not-
the same
we're not-
thing.
we're
We're
not-
doing Are we guessing not in ovens? I don't think so, bro.
Come on, man.
What the Japanese
That's
or all,
yeah.
like think about the Japanese. Let's think about the
It's too
Japanese.
close of a call. The
Think
only thing
about
we
the
didn't
Japs.
do was kill them. We did everything else the Germans did.
How
We
does
didn't
that make
execute
us
them. That is the only
Well,
difference.
I don't think we had little like tents or whatever, like you know, like little tents. We had actual at least wooden houses. And, you know,
Well, some Jews
But
did.
Jonathan,
Some Jews did.
have you ever been
Some,
forced to
not
do
all,
something you never wanted to do?
yeah, of course.
I was forced to come into this situation, and it's not a good feeling. I could relate to the situation. It doesn't.
But okay, let me ask you this question.
It's not bad for me, but I don't like it.
Yeah, you don't like it.
I don't
right?
like it.
But you still have necessary conditions to live in life.
Yeah, but it's
You
not.
are- I
It's
mean,
not fair to me.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's
It's
not
really.
fair.
It's not.
But I guess
The
it's necessary
conditions-
because you need to serve your side, your table. Well, that's, I mean, you
The
got.
conditions
Alright.
were too poor to say that it was okay, to say that it was alright.
Okay, yeah.
Do you know what happened after they got out of the internment camps?
Well, they, in 1988, Ronald Reagan apologized for the action and rewarded each surviving intern with $20,000. They spent over like $1.6 billion for each surviving intern, so they were justifying their own causes.
How many
But
years
that's not
afterwards?
enough.
How many
Yeah.
years afterwards was
Morally,
that from
that's
the war?
not correct.
1988, like 40 years. How many are still alive? The
George
children who
Takei's
barely
still
remember.
alive. I mean,
No, what I'm
honestly.
saying is like it's not like they saved their house and their property. We're gonna put you in this camp, after everything's worked out, you can come back to your house and your things. They took all of their property away. They had nothing to come back to after they came out of the camps. They had to rebuild their entire lives.
And they came back to
$20,000
violence.
is not a lot of money to rebuild your entire life on, to find a place to live, have food to eat.
And the
Not even
memories
then.
that you could
Yeah,
have had.
not even then. I mean now especially, but even back then, 20,000 is barely a courtesy fee. Of we have to give you something.
Makes you look bad for being a hypocrite.
Well, I mean, first of all, I mean, yeah, I guess I understand your point, but you gotta think of other nations' behavior as well. Once again, I mean, you guys keep cutting me off and I keep saying this, but like, Japanese, well, okay, what they do, they went and invaded all this land. For example, I guess Indonesia or Indochina. China itself. They went in there and were just basically, they imprisoned these dudes, enslaved them. They basically went, like, there's multiple stories that I heard where they went chopped hands off. Did we do that stuff? Are we that uncivilized? I feel that, we're more than justified because other nations were doing even worse things at that moment in time. And you gotta think about the dire problems at that time where there could be tax anywhere in the world.
It doesn't make it.
Okay, it's like saying, well, okay, my mother-in-law robbed a bank. That's awful. All I did was, steal some jewelry from my mom. It's totally okay, because he robbed a bank. It's still not right.
Well, I mean, not to say
And if you're
that's a
talking,
petty crime, but,
and if you're talking about, other nations, and we were at war, why only Japanese? If it was a world war, why did we not put into internment camps every single foreigner?
Every single foreigner, because most of the well, I imagine, at the time, I guess the significant foreigners and stuff like that were, oh, I mean, when I think of foreigners, I guess I think of, like, what, my...
People don't look like you?
What?
People who don't look at you, like you.
Don't like me.
No, don't look like you.
Oh, I was like, don't like me. I'm like, well, I don't know. I guess this whole group right now. Okay, wait. Okay, they don't look like. Okay, let me see. Let me collect my thoughts here.
Because I'm sure there were Germans living here
Germans,
while
yeah.
World
Actually,
War
there's
II.
2 people on this side that I haven't heard from yet. So if we can get their statements. Because Jonathan's doing a good job, and Ariel is also chiming
Do
in
you
well
want
with some
another
facts.
Pearl Harbor bombing?
Of
Do you want
course
another terrorist
I
attack?
got something like that.
We're trying to prevent future terrorist attacks here, not
But we
actively.
prevented
That
it in the
wasn't a
wrong
terrorist
way.
Yeah,
attack.
could
It
you-
was an
How
act
could
of
we
war.
prevent
It's
it
like
in
active
another
war.
way? How could we prevent it in another way if Japanese people were roaming around freely?
Well, don't you think putting them in
Technology we
internment
have
camps makes
now,
them
we didn't
mind?
have it back then.
Because
Yeah.
you put the wrong people in internment.
Well, what people should we put in?
No one.
Prisoners
They
of
were
war.
American citizens. They weren't all loyal to the emperor on the other side.
It would have
They
made
were
more
living here.
sense.
A
There's
lot
a
of them
reason-
were born here.
There's a reason why they came here, escaping from their dictatorship, whatever they had.
It was just an emperorship.
Well, I mean, a lot of the people were born here. They didn't just come here. It's one thing if it was a huge flood of immigrants at once, but a lot of them were born here and established lives already and were just living, and then one day they were taken away because there was a threat. Because they looked like the enemy, there was a threat that they could do the same thing. That's like saying if a black person does a crime, should all black people be punished? You shouldn't profile one group of people based on something one person does. It's not right.
I mean, I can continue on, but I mean, like, Brianna.
Okay, well, I had something to say, but you guys practically already said it, so.
Go ahead and just reinforce it then.
Okay. The Japanese deserve to be put in the camp because no one knew if they were spies or if they still supported Japan. That's what I have.
Nobody knows if
But
anybody's
I don't-
spies.
I don't
I'm
think they
a spy
deserved
right
it.
now. You can't just stick a bunch of people in camps because you might be a spy.
If you want to put someone in an internment camp, why didn't you make it Japanese prisoners of war, not the citizens in our homeland? Why didn't you?
Okay, so say we do have Japanese prisoners of war, internment camps, right? That would be in Asia, where, it's a much more dangerous thing. And those guys are
But it's more
legit fine.
justifiable.
More justifiable. I mean, like I said, like when you think about this, I wish in another world we can have a world of peace and all this stuff. But in reality, there's always going to be some type of problem of war, some kind of I guess crisis, and you got to just think about at that moment in time where other people are doing bad things, and you got to think about the potential outcomes. Do you want to risk for example? Is it okay, if we're going by your logic, is it justifiable to have airplane checks, get yourself all checked out for bombs just because a couple terrorists did it? what's that? I mean, but yeah, we're all like,
No
oh yeah,
one's being
America
locked
and stuff like
up.
that.
Yeah, it's
No one's being
America.
locked
It's a
up.
safety
It's taken
it's
away
and it's
from
not
their
it's
lives.
not
mean,
just
yeah,
for
it's
one
kind of a
specific
pain in the
race or
butt,
anything. It's for
but-
everyone. It's like everyone.
This was one race, and everything of theirs was taken away. It wasn't just like checking you. You're good. Continue on. They took everything.
And actually, checking at like airplanes, that's like a positive way to help prevent things like that happening in the future because no one's getting harmed. It's just
And it
going
takes
out
like
the way.
what, 20 minutes at most?
Well, the encampment was also helping us prevent more encampment in the future.
How so?
Like how if we encamp them now, then we wouldn't have to encamp them in the future.
Oh,
So,
well,
like,
good
for-
thing we did it early.
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
it's
no,
just
for-
like,
no,
you're
for
just saying it's a
example-
placement of
Check,
time.
check off the to-do
No,
list.
what
That's
she's
not
trying to say,
exactly
I guess what she's trying to say is that like, no, I guess to do something like this, I guess earlier with just a certain race. So then, if there's even worse, attack, we don't become too, scared, and then like I guess like basically encamp an entire like, not only race, but I guess certain allegiances or something like that. Because we don't be like I guess like the Germans where we go around killing people. Like that's not our thing, right? So we just give me an example of some Japanese guy dying in an internment camp. Several.
Who died of illness.
Yeah, a lot of people do die of
Yeah,
illness.
die of illness, okay?
And do you really think if there were, I'm sure there were people who stood up in the camps. No, I don't want to do this. This isn't right. Do you think they were just given a out and back? Like, nope. Sorry, I got to stay.
Well, I'm pretty sure because that was the encampment guards the jobs to do. Because I mean, they're not entitled to go and smack people stuff like that. If that's what you're trying to say.
But who's to prove they didn't?
Who's to prove that they did?
Exactly.
Exactly. So here we are with this stalemate.
This is always fun. All right. Let's go ahead and pause for a second and collect our claims and counterclaims. Outside circle. What are some of the claims that you heard for the position, and then what are some counterclaims against the position?
Gave them necessities of life and protection.
Okay, so the idea of necessity. So what's necessary? You can even make that into sort of an essential question behind this debate: is what is the difference between something being necessary and whether it's right? Because is it possible that something is necessary but also wrong to do? Could that be a thing? No?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. So that's something that you would need to also discuss, the difference between necessary, and I'm glad we use those terms. What's necessary versus what's right. Because there are two different things, and it is possible that we base our decisions based on what's necessary, not always on what's right, which is something that's hard to admit. What else? What was the other claim and counterclaim?
For a counterclaim, they said the camps they had malnutrition and there's diseases.
Someone playing trivia crack over there? What does that mean? I was like, am I confounded? Okay, yeah, turn off your trivia crack. Japanese internment happened in, like 1948. What would you say? I'm sorry.
That the camps had malnutrition and there's disease everywhere.
So that would be an example of a counterclaim to the side arguing for internment. Which actually everything's kind of backwards because the question is suggesting is it justified. So the pro position would be people who think it's justified. People who think it's not justified would be the con. So the counterclaim is that it was malnutrition. So there's a health factor in how we deal with necessary and rightness, maybe. If it were to be that I'm removing the health factor completely, that everyone is not malnutrition, would that make it less or more right, or less or more necessary? So that's a question to ask and to look at. Good. What else? That's a good counterclaim. What about a claim or a counterclaim? Another one. Yes.
They did it to protect the Japanese and the other.
Okay, so it was for both. It was necessary, or was it right? Maybe you can even argue that it's right. The claim might be that you are protecting both types of people. Those, I suppose, who are similar, not because of their ethnicity, but because of their fear. So that's one camp. And the other, which are the Japanese Americans, and that in order to protect both, you separate them out. So that's a claim based on dual protection and separation. What else? Give me another claim or counterclaim. Give me a counterclaim at this point. We have two claims, and I need two counterclaims.
Kiana
The second
mentioned the 14th Amendment for the counterclaim.
And if you notice, she said that in the beginning, so she started with her strongest argument, I thought, right in the beginning. So I knew that was kind of hard. I was like, I could tell, like, ooh, going right to the legal contract. Now, there was something that we talked about, and George Takei talked about, that you guys could have brought up that would have countered the legal contract of the 14th Amendment. What was that? Do you remember? What did Congress pass?
Yeah, if I remember right, which I wanted to say.
Go ahead.
But they kept.
No, they're not. They didn't interrupt. They did fine.
No, but if I remember right, didn't FDR pass a bill where they said on suspicion on I guess relation to enemies or like terrorists kind of things that they can go and just I guess arrest them, but for their safety and the safety of the
So there was legislation. There was a legal apparatus. They weren't just
so it
going
wasn't like
against the
illegal.
law.
Yeah.
They had made a law that helped redefine what the 14th Amendment covered, in the sense that this amendment didn't apply necessarily to legal or Japanese non-citizens or people who are sort of nationalists who are in the country but were not necessarily. In fact, the Chinese Exclusion Act, which we talked about last week, also everyone in Asia, they could not naturalize. So you could not come here, no matter how hard you worked, no matter how long you stayed here. You were always considered a non-citizen. So do non-citizens get the treatment of the 14th Amendment? So that would be a question to have. Now, it's actually not true. So just as a quick fact check, when people are in this country, they actually do get, at least from how we've decided it, Supreme Court and all that stuff, we actually do apply all the status of the Constitution, the basic protections, to even non-citizens. But do you think that legal precedent was in place during 1940s World War II? Do you think that distinction was made?
Probably not. It's probably seen as a loophole.
Yeah. So at the time, the Constitution was built for Americans, and that we could define legally who was and was not an American, and therefore give them constitutional rights or not. Now, even those who are like if you're from France and you come visit this country, they can't just and you start sort of buying some stuff. Americans can't just go and seize your property that you bought in America, just because you're from France. You have legal protection under our Constitution, even if you're not a citizen. But that wasn't in place in the 1940s. So think about a different time, which I think one of you kind of mentioned. You said, I think Jonathan had said something like to consider it from the time period. In fact, I think that was the seventh kind of argument that I heard here about being in context. What else? So these are good points so far. The 14th Amendment, very strong argument, legal contract there. A claim could be the Chinese Exclusion Act. They were already non-citizens, so the 14th Amendment may not have applied at the time to non-citizens. What else? What other claims, counterclaims did you hear? Give me two more. I need to hear from Javier's group. I need to hear from Zoe's group. And proof is all in the center, isn't it? Victoria. And also Tori's group. So give me.
Oh, actually, she did.
Oh, that's right. She did the same one. It's Louis' fault here. I don't remember. Yes, Javier.
They did in the Bureau of Spies. There's like more. There's
Okay, so it wasn't just protecting both sides. It was literally future attack. So not just attacking each other, potential retribution, but it's also, look, if we get rid of this group for a time out of our society, we can effectually stop future attacks that would be coming from within. Okay, so that was another point to the claim from the pro side. What else? Give me one more. Yes.
That they blame the other people for what because they look like the enemy.
Okay, so then the nature of appearance and stereotype. Look, they were not the enemy. Would it have been different if they only selected people who had previous connection to the military of Japan, or like let's say they're former soldiers, Japanese soldiers who came to America prior to World War II? Could that have been a more justifiable reason to intern people if it was just people with connections to the government? Okay, so that might be stronger, but at that point it seemed like the counterclaim, the claim that you guys are making, was that it appears that it was indiscriminate based on how they looked, and children, which I guess the pro side would say, well, they don't want to split up their families. Not that you guys had a really hard position. You guys argued it very well. I appreciate that. So let's break down some of these claims and counterclaims here. We already set them up. Fear, 14th Amendment legal, making it's better than what it could have been. So worst case scenario. And then on the counterclaim side, that it sort of perpetuated racism and differences. Some essential questions here. I just mentioned what's necessary versus what is right. How do you properly reimburse a former grievance? So that kind of came up. Look, how can you, if someone does something wrong, how do we as a society fix that? Or should we fix that? To what extent do you feel culpable for the past history? I noticed that you guys started taking on the persona of the people that were actually doing the internment. You're like, look, us. You started saying us, we kind of language. I think that's interesting. And in the same token, there was sort of an accusatory, as if the people on the panel, not that you actually think that the people on the panel are culpable when they're defending a position, but it's easy to make us them when you have formal debate like that. When someone is debating a position, it doesn't mean that they are in fact guilty of the position that they're even defending. So if I were to defend the Japanese internment, I would say I could easily say that I wouldn't do that, but I can see how it would be necessary back then for them to do it. So be careful when you put people into, well, you're just a Nazi like the rest of them, because there are differences in what I'm talking about. If we go farther back in the past, it makes it easier to distance yourself, especially if it's not your own nation. For instance, some of you might, if you look into history, you might say, well, it was necessary for Christopher Columbus to come to America in the first place because he was looking for India. It wasn't his fault that there was all this, disease or whatever that occurred with the native peoples. But it was necessary because he was forced to by King Ferdinand. It doesn't mean that you agree with everything that he did or that you would do it yourself. It's just that you can defend why somebody from history would do that. So to what extent do you feel culpable or guilty for past things? And you can take that to any controversy you want. Slavery, inequalities in education or in civil rights, etc. And then ultimately, someone said it's not right, or does that make it right? I didn't hear from this side asking the question like, what does it mean to have right?
That's
right.
what I was planning to do.
Why do you keep saying
That's all right.
it's fine to say this, but
Well, no, it's good though.
Well, I want to continue on with the debate. It was quite intense,
It was like.
So, like
That was good, but we are
because
getting
we're running
close
out
now.
of time, it seems.
We have about 10 minutes.
Well, that's 10 minutes go by.
Did you want to ask that question and talk about that?
No,
or-
I got
Ask the question.
something similar.
All right.
No, but no.
Go.
Is it related to the point, or?
Well, yeah.
Okay,
but
go ahead.
Just continue on.
No, I'm going to stop for a second. I'm going to ask your point, but you're going to filter through me so that it continues with our summary.
I mean, all I'm gonna say is like, I guess I just want to know from you guys, what is, I guess, your guys' definition of justification?
Okay, so that is a different question.
Yeah, exactly.
So justification would be something like, how do you know what's your evidence for something? So you're asking what is their definition of evidence?
Yeah, but like just basically, what
Or
is
like
just,
justified in the sense of like that you have sufficient reason to do something
Yes,
that would
exactly.
otherwise be considered wrong.
It follows one's moral compass.
So what would it take? So I guess he's maybe asking what would it? Is there any standard by which you would say something is necessary to do, even though in other circumstances it wouldn't be necessary to do? Like, what is your can you think of a scenario in which Japanese internment could exist, or is that always going to be wrong no matter what?
You always have a choice, even when it seems that you don't. Obviously, the other choice would be much more difficult, but.
For instance, and I think maybe this is where you can go with it, in the idea of war itself, can you ever have a justification for any form of conflict with another party or another group of people, despite it being people in your country or not? Is there any reason to go to war to begin with, or to do anything that could harm somebody else in that sense?
Well, I was thinking maybe if we were attacked from the inside and there was actual evidence of Japanese spies in America, then it might have been more justified, but it was nothing. We were attacked from the outside.
So it seemed like so you're saying that if there was real evidence that there was already an internal plot that could hurt somebody, or that it did hurt somebody. Let's say Pearl Harbor was an inside job.
Yeah, exactly.
From Japanese Americans, that you could see could be a greater justification.
Yeah.
Now, would you still personally disagree with the idea of having internment for everybody in that sense, or?
I would disagree, but I would see more of a reason for it.
Okay, so you at least understand the necessary, but
this
now it seems even worse because it's not an inside job.
Yeah, it was completely outside. They were just judged because they were Japanese.
So I think that's a good definition of your question. What does it mean to justify?
I got more, so I want to continue with the debate.
Go ahead.
Well, no, just answer your questions.
I did answer his question.
No, I said no. Just go.
Well, Jonathan, I'm the moderator. So when you jumped in to say I have more to the debate, and I say please continue, you don't argue with me. You either continue or you.
He just wants to argue with somebody.
Well, I'm just telling you the nature of things, and I asked.
9 minutes.
That was nice.
Okay.
By the way, I'm going to give you a time limit, though. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to make your argument.
Okay, well, I don't mean to sound cynical, but okay, to be realistic, though, I'm a leader of a certain country, right? And this, a certain country, and a certain other nation attacks me. Well, you see, a minority of that other nation's in my nation. You see, the majority of my nation is fearful of that other majority, which is causing lots of unrest and instability, and this is a time of war where I need to focus on other things instead of my own homeland. So to make this more calmer for both sides, this internment would be better for all, where we can focus our efforts on war and other things to go protect our country, instead of focusing on some instability, instead of, potentially getting attacked.
So
But
that's
when the conscience in the back of your mind goes, but wait, would this be right?
Now, does everybody think like that?
But you're the leader of a nation, you should. Or why are you there?
This is actually a good point, because I know you guys are going to go back and forth with it, but your scenario was fine in the idea that of decontextualizing for a second and saying this isn't about Japan or America. What if you're a leader and this is sort of happening? How do you deal with it? What necessary actions do you have to make, even if they're wrong? How can we take that idea, that scenario, and apply it in all sorts of circumstances, even modern ones? Think about modern things that we do or don't do, and how it might go against or for positions that you might naturally take. I'm thinking of, in particular, the definition of torture, because that just came out recently. Whether or not torture is a good thing or necessary. Can we change the definition of torture? Can we make certain things torture or not, based on our understanding of it? Is it necessary to ever torture to prevent future things? Immigration, modern immigration, what rights do we give? Do we give health care to non-citizens? Do we give naturalization of children who came here, young status? Do we give them paths to citizenship? Are we worried about security based on people that we don't know, undocumented, etc.? I hope you see the relevance of a conversation like this, because I think it's very easy, in hindsight, to say it was totally not justified to do Japanese internment. And yet, I want you to think about how even beliefs that you have today, whether or not they're consistent with how you would view the past. Does that make sense? You can see the past and say, look, this was clearly wrong. But do you have beliefs now that you might say, if I were to look at these beliefs 50 years from now, how would the things that I hold, or my parents hold, or people around me hold, that they value are important? how might they be seen in 50 years? Will we see them as wrong, as easily wrong as we do the past? Or can I sympathize with the group during that time that may not have had, just like you, not have that hindsight? At the moment they're afraid, at the moment there are issues involved, and they believe something based on their experiences. So I need you to consider those things, because your perspective is always going to be there. You're always going to have some type of limited understanding or view of what you view, what you believe. The next several units will include this kind of idea of perspective. The next unit will be on the Middle Ages, in which we look at Dante's Inferno, and we'll be going into hell. Hell is a big thing. Punishment is a big thing. Certain people hold to very strong beliefs about what is and is not wrong, and how it should and shouldn't be punished. And this has historical precedent. Beyond that, we'll look at the Renaissance, and we're looking at Merchant of Venice, in which characters like Jews are second-class citizens, even in the Renaissance. So your perspective on history is very important, because it's based on what you guys are going to view and believe for yourselves as people. How do you treat others? What are your beliefs? Do you hold beliefs that you would think now, like, maybe that is actually not a good belief?
Okay, so yeah,
go ahead.
Similar like that. Okay, I was just do like
wrap it up, Jonathan. You got 1 minute.
Just like do like a scenario. Okay, so like, okay, so just this scenario. Okay, you go and you're by yourself, right? Just by yourself, and you walk down. Just say you're in East LA by yourself. Just say that you're walking down the street. How are you feeling right now? Middle of the night, by yourself in East LA. Like in a local, say like gang affiliated area. How do you feel?
Why am I
I
there?
feel
Wait,
awesome.
why am I there?
I was just saying, like,
You don't feel safe. That's what you're trying to do.
Okay, yeah, okay. Now, why don't you feel safe?
Because there's.
Because you said it was a gang-related area.
What?
You said it was a gang-related area.
Well, yeah, okay.
You
Gangs hurt
stated
people.
it was
Yeah, I know,
gang-related.
but like, okay, so what are you afraid inside those gangs? Okay, well,
The
why not?
gang activities.
Okay.
But if you're gonna try,
Gang
if you're gonna
members.
try and
Gang
connect that,
activities.
if you're gonna try and connect that, in East LA, we are sure that is gang territory. We
They
know
let
we
you know.
know we are purposely.
I'm going to go ahead and stop, because that
Danger.
scenario is new evidence, I think, a little bit. Like you're trying to add more to it, and I wanted to more wrap it up. So the last thing that I want to think about is the nature of belief based on the type of thing. For instance, I was always under the impression that the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were justified to end World War II. I'm not so convinced that anymore after thinking about all these other topics. I don't know how it's presented in your history class, or what your thoughts are on that, if you've ever thought about that. You guys haven't looked at it, but I want you to consider it when you get there, because I think it's very easy to. It's hard to defend Japanese internment when it's Americans. It's a little bit easier when it's people in another country, and say, well, we needed to because World War II needed to end, and they saved it, so we needed to drop atomic weaponry on citizens. This is a question that's very important to the future of everything, so you need to consider it, weigh it carefully, and it will change depending on where you come from and what type of background and what you view as necessary versus right. That's where I want to leave it. Hey guys, that was a good debate. Outside circle, you guys get a round of applause, please. Thank you. All right. Make sure that you have some of these facts put into Saming Matter format for tonight. So that's your homework. Getting them into claim, counterclaim, you just need 2 body paragraphs. Claim, counterclaim, how it relates to your perspective. Not necessarily the group's, but yours. So even though it is a balanced approach, it is still your argument. So which side do you take? Lights on, please. What's up?
Where's my essay? Like I emailed it to you. So what did
Yeah, I didn't print it
get?
out.
What did I get?
I have them flagged for